In June 2020, after uncovering historic funding directly linked to slave trading, City University of London took action in three ways. Firstly, it changed the name of its business school. Secondly, it accelerated its internal equality, diversity and inclusion initiatives. And thirdly, it started to review a key external offering, the curriculum of the business school. This presentation is partly based on the voices of City staff, students and alumni. Paolo Volpin, Dean of the Business School, denied in a town hall meeting with alumni that the name change was in some way erasing history.
As a business school, we have a role to play in addressing these problems and inequalities. Repudiating the name of a slave trade is a first step in that direction. Now, this decision is not about canceling history. This decision is about facing up to our history.
Paolo explained how the name change encouraged a much more profound strategic review.
Second, and this is bigger, searching for a new name gives us the opportunity to re-examine more broadly what we can do to renew our commitment to excellence. We must tackle difficult social, economic, and environmental problems. We must ensure that our graduates are resilient in the face of unexpected problems and uncertainty. And it's really about prioritizing no longer knowledge over thinking.
The Dean was clear that the curriculum review needed to embrace all aspects of teaching and learning.
This means embracing different pedagogical approaches, educational technologies, assessment methods. This means challenging our students and ourselves to go out of our comfort zone for a teacher teaching always in the same way and explore the uncomfortable, the complex, and the unknowns that will be with us going forward in the future.
My colleague, Professor Bobby Banerjee, has co-created an international community of scholars which has begun to examine in detail the implications of decolonising the business school curriculum. Bobby is very explicit about the depth of challenge this represents to the status quo.
Hopefully, white people in this country can learn about colonialism, slavery, and other atrocities of the British Empire, shameful histories that have been deliberately left out in most curricula in schools and universities. Yes, statues must fall and names must change, but that is not enough. These are necessary but not sufficient conditions. We need to address the structural basis of racism, the institutional racism that exists everywhere, and understand how colonialism and imperialism, which were justified by the Enlightenment ideals that Europeans hold so dear, are the basis of racist structures of today's society. And more important, we need to figure out what we can do to dismantle these structures. And that's where decolonization comes in.
A recent online conference of the Curriculum Decolonization Network led to 19 different aspects of the business school curriculum being scrutinized. In September 2020, the university published a high-level report into historic sources of funding. One of the recommendations of the external academic advisor, Professor Richard Drayton, very pointedly asked the university to consider educational and workforce exclusion side by side. An assessment of the curriculum and how the forms of knowledge and approaches it prizes might exclude or give less value to BAME people, affecting their ability to participate as full citizens of the university and the world of learning. Before June 2020, I had been developing a critique of the 20th century university and business school based around critical pedagogy. I argued that they had drifted away from traditional ideas of higher education and were no longer flexible enough to address wicked global problems in either teaching or research dimensions. I saw global organizations as key in this, so was delighted to hear alumnus Prosper at the alumni town hall meeting argue the case to repeat the collaboration which led to the formation of the United Nations.
Europe, and they made the collective decision to step in and adopt change for the better. These reciprocal actions created the United Nations, amazing. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, amazing. The World Bank, amazing. NATO, amazing. Names and institutions that had not existed before but have stood the test of time. And these elements and institutions which have brought a semblance of order and peace and prosperity to large swathes of the world came out of a willingness to embrace change and a surge of imagination and creativity.
Hi everybody, I'm Dom Davies. I'm co-chair on City's Student Attainment Working Group. We work across the university to try and reduce City's degree awarding gap, which means the gap between white students and students from the BAME background in the final degree that they get. Obviously, there are loads of ways of tackling that gap, but I think decolonising curriculum is a crucial way to move forward with it.
If we don't call out the history, if we don't name it, if we don't disavow the wrongs, if we do not teach it, how can we learn from it? If we do not say we need to distance ourselves from the name of men like this and his deeds, how do we make a stand for what must be remembered in order not to be repeated? If we do not remember that time that people were enslaved and dehumanized based on their race, how do we overturn and avoid rebuilding the structures that led us there? When we remember, when we call it out, we disavow it and acknowledge that criminal, inhumane acts that created these injustices should not be repeated.
So in summary, I am in favor of this name change because I believe that we need a name for our school that reflects our values. And I think that the value of our degree will only increase from it. And we are making, not erasing history. I would say let's take this first step.
If this institution is to remain in its role as a thought leader, both academically and from a business perspective. Most importantly, a decision like this says what happened was wrong. That in itself is a message to the Black community. The hope that springs from this and its related actions is the legacy that we can all be proud of as alumni. A legacy of empathy and positive change that will yield the future leaders that we can be proud of.
I've deliberately used the word reformation in the title, not for its religious links, but due to the Macmillan Dictionary definition. Number one, the process of improving a situation by correcting things that are wrong or unfair. Number two, the process of changing your own or someone else's behavior so that it is no longer illegal or harmful. This is accepting the starting point is wrong or harmful, and then actually changing to stop that wrong or harm. On the surface, many universities remain successful in pursuing values and methods derived from the Enlightenment and successive scientific and industrial revolutions. Unfortunately, it is the historic success of universities which precisely makes reformation so problematic as a concept and so likely to be actively resisted. In parallel with the external question of slavery-based funding, BAME, that's Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic, staff of the business school had produced in August 2020 a very thoroughly researched and highly critical study of lack of equality, diversity and justice in the school and university. This augmented existing internal pressure from our colleagues in the workforce for institutional action. It also became clear that decolonisation of the curriculum cannot be divorced from these urgent improvements in the working environment for staff and students. In relation to scholarship of teaching and learning, decolonising the curriculum is multi-layered. It ranges from tactical, such as change reading lists, visiting speakers and case studies, to the highest level relating to the purpose of a university and the relevance of traditional pedagogy. We have found Peter Goodyear's 2001 framework, which was developed for e-learning, is still very valuable in the context of decolonisation, especially on the need for dialogue where there are conflicting values and priorities. At Bobby Banerjee's conference on the curriculum were dozens of colleagues who'd spent their whole lives, personal and professional, enduring the direct consequences of colonialism in higher education as in wider society. There was a particular strand of skepticism about those people like me coming new to the area, both personally and academically. The focus of those with direct experience, as you also heard from the students and alumni, is hearing just words. Energy needs to go into deeds and onto visible change on the ground. For those of us who are teachers, the curriculum may be a starting point, but I have added beyond into my title to underscore that much more is needed than a starting point. I would just like to summarize our case study. It started with an unexpected external revelation, which led directly to the change of name and then change of business school strategy, including education. Internal voices of Black, Asian and minority ethnic staff members accelerated emphasis on diversity and equity. Another external report on funding connected historic wrongs with curriculum change. Such change is now going forward, underpinned by a global scholarly community and embedding SOTL thinking. So that's our case study, very much a work in progress. Thanks to the many colleagues, inside and outside, City University of London, who contributed visibly and invisibly. I'm delighted now to hand over the last word to Ruqayya, Vice President of the City Students' Union. She summarises why the changes that we are only just beginning are so important to students both now and in the future.
If City continues with a colonised and Eurocentric approach to research and the curriculum, then we are letting our students down. Students today know that they are entering into a global workforce and want to feel confident to navigate this. Students want to be taught in a way that best equips them to deal with today's major issues like racial equality and cultural competency. If City truly wants to be diverse, inclusive and ambitious, then there needs to be a decolonised curriculum and a renamed business school that truly reflects these values.